Okay. Is that us on? I think we are on. We are live.
Fantastic.
Yes, fantastic indeed. Hello, everybody. How are you doing? It's a beautiful Sunday evening. I've got the sun just blazing through the window. A few grey clouds, but it is Manchester, so what do you expect? It's great for me to have this opportunity to have this stream with someone that I've really wanted to get on a stream for so long. Someone who's followed my channel and has contributed to the content of my channel in the last probably year, would you say, Rose? Something like that?
If not longer, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, in many different facets on many different topics. So this lady is so important to what I'm doing, and obviously the object of tonight is for me to now showcase who is Rose English. How you doing, Rose English?
Good evening.
You doing okay?
Yeah, I'm a bit nervous, but I'm okay.
You'll be fine. Well, let me break the ice by saying your second name's a little bit of a touchy subject on this channel at the moment.
What, with Janaea?
No, as in English. The word English seems to rub off bad against Red Pill Phil at this moment in time, Rose.
Oh, right, I get you. Yeah. I get you. All right, okay, blonde moment right over the head. Woof.
Yes, let it go. Let it go. I might do that. I might come out with little sarky jabs every now and then. Just ignore me. I'll cool down. I'll get back to normal. So how's your weekend been going, Rose? Okay.
Yeah, it's been a lovely weekend. The other half's been away. I've had the kids mithering me to death, but wouldn't change it any. Wouldn't change the world for it.
Yeah, you know what it's like. It's it's always the way that you long for that bit of peace, that couple of days tranquility away from all the madness of the kids being under your feet, and then give it 3 hours when you're on your own with your other half, with your kids totally out the way. What's the first thing you do? You start to miss them. You start to forget about, yourself, really, don't you? You forget about what yourself is all about, and you just you want to get back to normality, which is the kids under your feet. It's strange, that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. My 5-year-old can talk for England and question everything. And, I find myself sometimes thinking, God, I wish I could go deaf for half an hour because this kid does not stop talking.
Yeah.
But, it just shows how intelligent he is and how much he really wants to engage. And I can't scold him for that. But sometimes it's like, oh, God, shush, please. It's quite hard to control.
Is that inquisitive state where everything's a question, is it?
Oh, aye. Oh. Definitely.
So how many other children have you got, Rose, while we're on the subject?
I've got 4.
All varying ages?
All various, yeah, all different ages. I thought it was quite sweet because a lot of people on your channel who saw me with the guy from Alaska kept referring to me as this young girl, and I was like, oh God, they think I'm so young. It's brilliant, this. And no, I'm 40 next year.
Yeah.
Kept referring to me as this.
Sorry. Carry on.
You're all right. Yeah. No, I'm 40 next year, so my eldest is 20.
Right. Okay.
My the second one is 13, and then I've got a 10-year-old girl and then a 5-year-old boy. So yeah, the 7-year itch definitely is there. Well,
on that topic, I mean, your level of research and maybe what red pilled you in the first place. I mean, how has that made an impact with the fact that you've got kids with different age groups, meaning that they're at different stages of life and they're learning and what they're having to soak up? You know what I mean? How's that with you having 4 kids of different age groups?
The family's quite dynamic in that sort of sense. We do sort of try and get along as much, but there is a lot of personality clashes within the household. The educational differences I can see from my eldest to my 13-year-old, he's convinced there is 3 genders, and if you say it any other way, you're wrong. And my 10-year-old, which is more woke than anything, she's so intelligent. She wants to be a vet, and she's literally saying, no, there's only 2. I can get on with the gay movement, no problem, Mum, but I just don't understand this third gender. I was like, okay, talk to your brother. And them two will literally fight it out amongst themselves about this third gender, which is hilarious to hear as a mum.
And how do you interact? Where do you lie with all this? In fact, I know that's a silly question to ask, but I thought I'd just throw it out there anyway, Rose.
The thing is, I mean, as a sort of from a scientific background, you know, I will stick with biology all the way. And I've studied sociology as well, and I understand the different social constructs towards gender, and I can talk about that. With the kids, the way they're battling it out, you can see one is at high school and it's sort of really important to be politically correct, and the other one's just going to start in the last year of junior school, and she's not bothered at all what people think about her, what comes out and what comes across from her. And I definitely think the education system is completely up the chute at this moment in time when it comes to things like that. I don't care what people get up to in their own bedrooms. I don't care what people dress up like. I don't care at all. You know, whatever floats your boat and whatever makes anybody as an individual happy, crack on. That's all I can say about that. Is literally, if you know in yourself and you're 100% happy, that's good. And it doesn't bother me in the slightest.
But from a professional, how do you feel?
As a professional, as somebody who studied biology, I mean, I can go through the different biological chromosomal differences between, so like there's Klinefelter syndrome, there's Turner syndrome, there is all different genetic abnormalities on the sex chromosomes themselves. But if at the end of the day, if you have a Y chromosome, you are a male.
Yeah, it's simple science, really. It's not too difficult. It was only not so long back on a previous upload, there was a lad from Scotland that got through out of his class expressing that view. And the teacher literally remonstrated with him as if to say that's more of an extremist view. And if you want to hold that, then keep it. I think his words was, keep it in your own house. As if to say, don't bring that opinion to school because it's not shared. There's a kind of a community way of looking at the transgender issue, and it's kind of inclusive, isn't it? You know, you've got to acknowledge all of them. And you can't, one thing you can't do is misappropriate. It's a very weird world. Now, same again, as a professional, you'll know more than most. I don't know whether you want to talk about certain issues. If you don't, that's fine, Rose. But you've been brought up to task over expressing them opinions in the most placid way you could, in a academic way.
Yeah. The thing that I was brought to task with and got an actual written warning was discussing transgenderism. Well, I was actually discussing why I got a ban on Facebook. And it was in my works canteen where there's other customers and things like that surrounding me at the time. And my manager deemed that as something that say if there's somebody from the local newspaper was behind me listening to that conversation, you know, it could really put my place of work in disrepute.
So they're doing the same thing the school's done then?
Pretty much, yeah. And the ban on Facebook and the ban on Twitter was literally me there was a trans political debate, and I literally just said, look, men have prostates, women have cervix. There is no reason for either of these people who identify in their mind as the opposite sex to go for a smear test or go for a prostate exam. Why the hell would you want to? And the pressurization on the NHS to have somebody who's born a biological male feeling left out because they don't have cervical smears is ridiculous, because I hate having mine done. Smears are not nice, and I can imagine for a bloke a prostate exam isn't, you know, fantastic either.
Well, I mean, like you say, look at it 180 flip. It's like a woman who almost all of a sudden wants to be pronounced a man, goes through all that because they can't wait to really get the fingers up the bum to have a prostate exam. You know, it's like any male knows that it mustn't be as humiliating and as probably as embarrassing as what a female would have to go to. So I'm not trying to put it on that level, but there's something very undignified about someone shoving fingers up your rectum. So if you want to, why join that club? I mean, that's what I'm trying to say is here is whatever examination you have as your own gender, fine, but it's almost like I'm envious of what that other sex is having. So I can't wait to join that club because, hey, you know, as soon as that happens, I'm getting a finger right up the, you know, I'm sorry to take it there. It's my council estate mentality.
No, well, you're right. You're so right. It's just absolutely, women dread that sort of thing as men dread the prostate exam.
Yeah.
Why the hell would you wish that upon yourself? I just don't get the mentality at all, or why they feel left out, because women would gladly go through. I mean, that's probably why, you know, people do die of prostate cancer, why women die of cervical cancer, because we are so, because it's so indignified and it's not nice. And there's these people thinking, yay, I'm now a female, I want a cervical exam. What the hell? Sorry.
No, it's true though. It's not
crazy.
It's not a queue that you can. They're not giving out free bread here. It's like it's not a queue that you can't wait to get to the front of. It's something that no one really wants to join on either side because it's one of. It's saying again, it's no one wants to go through it. I mean, most men stereotypically don't like going to the doctors per se. Never mind if they know that when they go there, the pants are down and they've got a finger up there. You know what I mean? It's like no, why would I stay at home? You know? And some silence that is generally kind of men's attitude. Going back to the transgender thing, I mean, the psychology of it as well. Do you think it's almost fair? I mean, look at it this way. Imagine someone's going through, we're talking about non-consensual. So we're talking about kids who are being introduced into, you know, being encouraged into having, you know, these changes. In your opinion, would it be far easier to try and work with that someone and try and establish what's going on in the mind in the hope of maybe getting them to a balanced, rational state of thinking? Or do you think it's better doing what they're doing now, just allow people to go through what they're going through under like human rights, and then have to deal with the psychological effects maybe 20, 30 years later when they've gone through all them processes and they suddenly realize, because this is a true stat about suicide rates within the transgender community, that psychologically it's not made them any better. In fact, it's probably loaded them up even more with trauma than if they would have maybe psychological or counseling at that beginning stage when they may have felt confused.
This is a subject I'm really, really passionate about. Puberty blockers at a young age is wrong. Even though these children are dead set on they're in the wrong body. And, you know, I haven't got more compassion than anybody who thinks that they're not comfortable in their own skin. That is really painful, especially when you're looking at a child. But we need to accept what puberty blockers do to the children. They make them, their genitalia, literally forever children's genitalia.
Really?
So, absolutely. So the genitalia doesn't grow, and when it comes to a sex change years down the line, their penis wouldn't have been formed big enough or well enough to actually formulate a normal working vagina in the trans surgery. And the same goes for females, because they have it's literally the puberty blockers keep them in an infantile state. So there is no way that a normal sex change, what we know of them now, will not work. And I can't see, well, why would you even start with that? If the end game is to change their sex, why start puberty blockers that will inhibit surgery?
Yeah, yeah. You could argue it's kind of a form of mutation in a way, because they're being changed to the point where there's an element of not being able to return, or at least not changing in the direction that they want to go in. So same again, it goes back to the psychological. Although you're giving them blockers to maybe enable them to make the next move, with what it's doing with the side effects or with the effects of it, is that going to cause more psychological heartache than benefits with taking the drug in the first place? This is the point.
I think there's not enough information out there. I think the parents themselves are clearly ignorant. We've come so much now to think about people's feelings rather than the factual basis for things. And it is really, really upsetting that people are putting their children through this. Because, right, as a mum of four, a fully functioning female, and you as a fully functioning male, if you was told, I'm going to give your kid identifies as this, and there is a 35% chance to 45% chance your child will never ever in their lifetime have sexual pleasure, would you do it?
No way. No. If any procedure had that percentage, it's almost 50-50. So you'd kind of steered on the side of caution, wouldn't you, and go, well, is it worth it? Because the probability is too high that things could go wrong.
It's not even about going wrong in that sort of sense. It's about knowing the options that are out there. These children not only will be forever infantile in their with their sex organs, if they're put on puberty blockers, but even if they're not put on puberty blockers, their chances of having an orgasm are completely, like 45%. It's a human thing. You know, we are one of two mammals in the whole sort of species of mammals that enjoy sexual pleasure. And would you deny your child an orgasm? I know you can't even think about it in that sort of sense that far ahead, because you're seeing an innocent being, but that person needs to grow up. Would you deny that?
No. Same again, I would be worried about the psychological effects that I would be bestowing upon my child, with the knowledge that that's the way it's going to be for my child forevermore. So that'd be more detrimental rather than the benefit of them actually being, moving towards being a male, being a female. The transition is just, it doesn't make sense. There's too many areas where the individual could be damaged, whether it be physically or mentally or both.
Well, that's why I think there needs to be some sort of age limitation and some legislation with common sense about it, because what they're doing to children is you can teach them about two daddies and two mummies in different sort of households. You know, we all accept that, and children are so diverse anyway, they can accept that. But once they start saying, I don't want to be a girl anymore, where did they get the idea from that they could change that? And it's coming from school, it's coming from the TV. It is literally a propaganda issue, because I don't think no child would actually say that. I mean, when I was 10, and I can see it in my own daughter now, when I was 10, I started developing, and I was still on my BMX, climbing trees, skateboarding, things like that. I wore baggy t-shirts and tracky bottoms. I wasn't ready to embrace womanhood. That doesn't mean that I wanted to be, I was a tomboy by any sense of the word, but that didn't mean I wanted to be a boy. It just meant I just wasn't ready for embracing womanhood or going through puberty or growing up. And people need to accept that. My daughter's doing exactly the same thing. She's quite tomboyish as well. And we need to stop this. It's okay for a girl to do this, that, and the other. Like I said to you last night, it's like the 90s happened. Where did that get missed? Because the 90s were so progressive in the sense of gender roles that, you know, girls could be cool on a BMX bike. You know, lads are all right to sit down and have chats with girls. Do you know what I mean? And that sense is just taken to the next step level to absolute madness.
Well,
I just don't understand it.
the one thing which we knew, but at least in the a few uploads that are done in terms of Haywood Art Gallery, I think it was, there was a teacher program called a teacher training program called Gender Intelligence. It's all about gender identity. Now, that was one program within that video that Kat had sent me a little bit of research, a few video clips. And that clearly shown that there's documentation that this is on a worldwide level, Rose. You know, we get worried on a very local level because it's happening to our kids. Our kids are exposed to it. You turn the TV on, it then goes to national. But then when you've got pretty much every known country in the world that's going under this program, what do you reckon's going on there then?
I mean, I've said quite a few times that there is a specific design that is always that has been led out for sort of humans to follow, and the plans are from the elitists and other different organisations. I'm not going to sort of glorify them in any sort of way by mentioning their names, but there is a plan in place, and it's humanity's responsibility to push them away. I'm not listening to propaganda anymore. Go away. I mean, it is working. We are getting to the point of sort of populism, you might even call it. But Agenda 21 was pushed back to Agenda 30. We can't stop the plan. The powers that be were going to implement this plan anyway. They're going to follow their design, what they want of the world. And all we need to do as mere humans is literally push them back and say no.
It's waking up to it, isn't it, Rose? I mean, like you were saying, it's astonishing, really, when you think of how easy this toxicity with the sexualization of children is being rolled out, and how easy parents are adapting to it under progressiveness. You know, now works in another way where we like to think, you know, where's the parents' moral compass, in a sense that, like you've just said, where's the outrage? Why aren't we literally stopping what we're doing, going down to 10 Downing Street and saying, this is our children, enough is enough? And literally this goes across every paradigm. But like you were saying before, because of the agenda, because of the amount of overload with this toxicity from every avenue, and the way it's all, like you say, it's been propagandized to a point where there's a smiley face on it under the veil of, you know, progressionism. That is, for me, making adults, parents appease a little bit more. Just like I would say, if schools now, parents nowadays, they tend to have very much a laid back attitude with kids and the music they play. Even I am, to a degree. The music that is played nowadays by even my daughter, it would make any person go, what the hell? You know, the lyrical content, the kind of thuggish kind of attitude that it is in today's kind of music. It's that in itself is very toxic, but same again, because it's been pumped in through every radio station, It's very much validated. You've got superstars that are coming off the back of it. You've got a celebrityism that's coming off the back of it. So all them things there make the parent think, well, I would be really the one out of order if I now stop my children doing that. Because from what I can see, it's on every radio station, it's on every music channel, and you turn on, you know, whatever you want, it's there. So if I stop my kids, there's parents everywhere. So it's almost like a guilt trip in it, in that you've got to go along with the ride, whether it be music or transgender. Do you get what I mean? That was a bit.
Yeah, I completely get you as well. And you know, the pressure as a parent that I'm under to get my 13-year-old playing 18 plus games, it's immense, because adults are caving to children's needs, and it never happened before.
Yeah.
It never happened before. We are caving to children's needs because of peer pressure, where we used to turn around and say, if that's what such a body's mate's mum is allowing him to do, she will get told at the school gates, and everybody will know that she's a bad parent. Do you know what I mean?
You've just hit on it, Rose. You've just hit on it.
There's no community.
It's the community, isn't it? It's the moral compass within the community is fading away.
Absolutely.
That's what's causing it. So no one really cares now. You know, if your next door neighbour's kid's acting like a wrong'un, you're very unlikely to get involved, because it could end up in an altercation. You know, and you've got different social levels, different intellect levels. There's no community spirit there whatsoever. So then you just let it happen. You know, how do you bring that moral compass back? Is it a case of education with these people? I mean, is it red pilling? I mean, what is making people, parents, appease to the kids? Is it because of they might have had it so difficult? Because I've thought this, and every time I speak to, I'm sure you're the same, with whatever childhood you had, it's always instinct that when you become a parent, you tend to think, well, I'm gonna make sure my kid doesn't have it as bad as me. I'm going to make sure my kid does this. I'm going to make sure my kid does that. You know, and that kind of thing. Is it that, or is there more to it?
It's really, really hard to say, because I was raised by hippies.
Really?
Yes, I was raised by hippies, and I had no boundaries at all. So I rebelled, and looking back now at my 39-year-old self, is literally looking back and thinking, I rebelled because I wanted boundaries. I wanted some sort of acknowledgement. You know, it just literally felt I could do whatever I want, meant my mum and dad didn't give a flying F. Honestly, you know, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? I completely rebelled, and I just wish I had that sort of conservatism in my upbringing to make me a better person, and that probably makes me a bit stricter on my children.
Right. So you've gone the other way then?
Yeah, absolutely, because I had no boundaries, and I'm going to ensure that my children do have boundaries. Right. I think there's a lot of people that have been born in the 80s will probably feel the way I'm feeling as well.
Yeah.
Because they are sort of literally productions of hippies. And I think that's how the 90s happened. I really do think, you know, sort of the boom, 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 sort of, you know what, say wayo.
Yeah.
You know, that was played on the radio, and that was played in the nightclubs in the 90s on the full aspect of it as well. Absolutely. And you know,
I think you mean, though. I know what you mean. It's like the 90s in Manchester anyway, particularly with the insurgence of the Manchester music scene. There was an insurgent, a second coming of the hippie movement. Everyone was walking around with hoodies and flowers and feeling good about the world. And probably a few drugs probably helped that along. You know what I mean? There was a very much a lovingness going on. A lot of kind of festival mentality and a lot of people together. Now, just to put bookends on this, because we're going to move on to another subject in a minute, but Now you've mentioned that you were brought up by hippies. What was the positives you would say being brought up by hippies as opposed to normal everyday children, what they might have lacked?
That's a tricky one. I do think what I learned from my parents, and especially my grandparents as well, was allotment life, dig for England, be self-sufficient, grow your own food, provide for your family and share amongst everybody around you, which was really, really good. When I was growing up, my dad and my uncle and my granddad had a massive allotment plots, and everybody sort of literally congregated around the family. They didn't have to pay for food at a supermarket because of what they produced, and the literal sort of the culture of it was fantastic. And
a lot burden off, wouldn't it? You know, you'd be a lot happier within yourself, because if you don't have to worry about supermarkets, you don't have to worry about the income in order to generate that, and it being in that commercialized world anyway. That's not forgetting the actual product itself, because if you're talking about hippie self-sufficiency, I'm almost certain that you're going along the lines of organic food.
Yeah, everything was homegrown. Everything was allotment based. We was never hungry. And my parents were pea poor, and so were their grandparents. They lived in Burnley at the time. They had mundane jobs, and it really, really was successful. I'll tell you a story, but my grandma always sort of did this amazing stew, absolutely amazing stew, and she would never give me the recipe while she was alive, right? Yeah, and I know. My granddad used to race pigeons, show pigeons. We used to show bunnies. He got me and my brother involved. We used to go to different shows and have show standard pigeons and show standard rabbits and things like that. There was always a thing behind the greenhouse that I wasn't allowed to go to, and my granddad said it's because of the honeybees. You're not allowed to disturb the honey and the bees. Okay, no problem. Yeah, I found out the rabbits that produced non-show standard ended up in my grandma's stew when I was eating rabbits.
So at least you try to shield you from the fact that you're eating it for tea tonight.
Yeah, I was allowed to play with the show standard ones, no problem, but the ones around the back ended up in my bloody Sunday dinner.
Now, you know what? That is what you call rabbit eugenics, that, Rose. That's pretty bad when you think about it, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's how things used to go in a community, sort of, even
the got it, the weak one gets it. You look at it's Savannah Desert, the lion, the tiger, whatever catches its prey, it's going to go for the most vulnerable. It's just the way it goes, really, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's just so funny to sort of reflect on, but I can understand it was so sustainable as a living, and how my grandparents managed to pay for my mum's education, because my mum has got super IQ, and I think that's probably where I get my brain power from as well. But this sustainability of it was fantastic. They never needed to go to a supermarket because they kept their own chickens. Obviously rabbit stew and pigeon pie and all sorts. But we never wanted for anything. And I think that's what I rejoice in, sort of the hippie parents that I had.
Yeah.
Which was sort of built on the sort of dig for England sort of thing. I think I'd love to see people do this a little bit more.
Yeah. That's leading me on to what exactly I was going to say. Self-sufficiency. Do you think that's a way of bringing back values? Do you think self-sufficiency will wake people up somewhat to bring them back to a grounding level?
It'll certainly bring back the high street.
Yeah, yeah.
It
No,
will bring back the high street as well.
Look at the values. I'm thinking, reading between the lines of what you must have gone through, having that community spirit. Because if you're going to grow, then if you've got a row of houses that are all growing organic food, then the first thing you're going to do, you're going to knock on your next door neighbour and you're going to go, mate, I've got loads of tomatoes here. We've got enough here. Do you want some? Oh, well, you know what? By the way, I've got plenty of spuds here, so why don't we do a trade? Do you see what?
Exactly. And that's the fundamental of capitalism, and people don't get it. That is the fundamental issue of capitalism. Exchange. You are growing something that I can't grow or haven't grown. Let's do a swap.
Yep.
And then people will build on that, and that's where local business originally came from. People actually creating art, candles, bakeries, butchers, fishmongers. Everything was all based on the community and what the community needed. And we was all self-sufficient. And with the introduction of supermarkets, it has literally destroyed our high street. It's literally destroyed local crafters, local makers. I've always said, you know, who cares about bloody chlorinated bloody chicken? If you go to your local bloody farmer, you won't get it, will you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right, with Brexit, we're going to get this American trade deal. We're going to get all these chlorinated chickens in our supermarkets. It's like, no, you don't need to buy them. If you don't buy them, they're going to get sent back and our customers don't want them. What's the problem with that? I want people to shop local.
Well, like you say, the supermarkets, the commercialization of today, it's made people very lazy, hasn't it? I think that's really what we're getting at, and we're losing the skills and the traits that humanity has always had. Necessity builds innovation, I guess, doesn't it? You know what I mean? You're going to want to build something if you feel the need for it. But then if you've got a computer chip that can do everything for you, what are you going to do? You're just going to sit back and put your arms up and flick over the telly. There's no need to think, so it slows down the brain pattern. So next thing you know, within 50 years, you've got a civilization that's just a blob on a couch that probably has a chip in it where it can plug into a hive mind somewhere. You know, you can feel that drip, drip. And to me, the hippie thing was an explosive thing that when you mentioned it, I mean, we've gone way over there because there's other topics, but that in a way has brought it back to where we're at, you know, the lack of self-sufficiency, the lack of community, and the lack of just literally having some form of obligation with the community and, you know, the spirit and whatnot.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we are so busy and we're literally distracted by our own busyness and all these different things that we're rushing around and not enough to do anything about the problems that we're faced with. We are taught now that putting your head down a bottle of wine is easier than facing your problems. We're literally not in any sort of social position to stand by our own morals because we are being pushed and pushed and pushed to engage in things that are so easy for us. I'm struggling to articulate that point of view, but
no, you're right in a sense. I mean, also with the drink, you've got the pharmaceuticals that they're quick to pump down you instead of, for some reason, why they don't advocate people going out for walks, enjoying the life, getting some fresh air. I mean, in the Victorian age, if you had a few quid, they used to recommend for a lot of ailments, you go abroad, you go to Egypt, you go to somewhere where there's plenty of vitamin D. And that was a disinfectant within itself, just to kind of chill the soul, in a sense. I think what we say in the modern day lifestyle is negating that, is forgetting about the soul. And we're kind of rushing into something else, busy, 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 busy. And we're forgetting the consciousness level and what really appeases us as human beings on a spiritual level. Without
we are so polarized now. It's like, yeah, fair enough. You know, you favorite sports team, you celebrate that, and that's all you care about all year round. Yeah. You're literally falling for the system. And fashion, what's on Coronation Street, what's on EastEnders, what's on the next drama, bloody Love Island. For God's sake, do we really need that on TV?
Rose, can I just butt in? You've just reminded me. I'm going to have to cut the stream because I've got a rerun of Love Island coming on any minute. Right, guys, I love you all. Leaving the pissinators. No, I'm sorry, Rose. Carry on.
No. But do you know what I mean? We are sort of driven as human beings to this sort of dumbing down. It's so obvious to me how dumb it is. Yeah. And I find it really, really difficult walking into the workplace where there is a literal dumbing down of society, and these people are going, did you watch that at the weekend? Did you watch that? Did you see this? Did you hear about Meghan Markle? Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I don't give a flying fuck. And that is literally where I am at the minute, because it is so boring to me.
It's low vibrational. And when you think in your profession as well, I mean, these are highly academic people, highly trained individuals. I'm not saying there's anything with a bit of light-hearted entertainment, but when that really takes over your life to the point where your whole life is really kind of pleasantly happy with just sitting watching mind-numbing TV all night and not getting any bit of information over the course of that evening that you can then go into the next morning and go, oh, this has made my mother used to always say something, God rest her soul, tidbits of knowledge, my mother used to always say, just little useful facts that you kind of stored away in a bottom drawer somewhere that 20 years later, I'll be sat with my kids and the chase will be on or some kind of quiz show. And it, you know, a random question will come up and it'll be like, boom, you know, tidbit. And then my kids will look at me and go, where did you get that from? And I'll just say tidbits of knowledge, just little bits, because my mum said that. My mum has almost said, always leave room for tidbits of knowledge. Don't dismiss them, because it all adds up over the years, you know, general knowledge.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And hang on. I think the biggest problem now that what we're facing in this day and age is political correctness.
Well, I tell you what, Rose, let's move swiftly on then, because you've just, honestly, you're bringing up these talking points beautifully for me. I've got the next on my list, grooming gangs, or should we say sexual exploitation gangs, rape gangs, however you want to term it, just nasty people that want to exploit individuals, whether they be young individuals or older individuals. Now, Rose, where's your, let's put you on this.
All right, grooming gangs. I was brought and raised up in Burnley until I was 10, and then I moved to a little beautiful town called Shaw, which is literally between Oldham and Rochdale. So you can, it's literally 2 miles to Rochdale, 2 miles to Oldham, and you could see the multicultural problems that was arising from that. Being brought up from hippie parents, everything was fantastic and everything was beautiful and kumbaya with every sort of culture. And then you realize as you grow up, it's not that simple. And I think we are played against each other as communities, and I do think multicultural society has completely failed, because you've got the English moving away where the Muslims are, or where any sort of foreign people are. They're moving away as they establish, and then they establish in that town, and then they get blamed for it, for accustoming a whole town. Well, if the white British people didn't move away, it would have been multicultural. If you flip it on its head, in the sense that, yes, it's not about a takeover. If you hadn't left your town, it wouldn't be.
Yes. At the same time, multiculturalism has got to work both ways, hasn't it? You know what I mean?
I absolutely agree.
In brackets, we're talking assimilation, integration. So as you know, you can understand why, if you've got people that do come over and they're not encouraged to integrate, to become part of the community, to adhere to the traditional British values, no matter where they come from, whether they're Muslim, whether they're African, whether they're Eastern European. I've got neighbours up the street from Romania, and they are the least integrated family on this street. They conduct the business like they're in Romania.
Absolutely.
You know,
if you look at what's happened in Newcastle,
it's ridiculous. And so, you know, people can say, well, let's polarize it to Islam and Muslims. No, if we're going to go immigration, if we're going to go migration, we're talking about everyone that comes in. And I've got no problem with anyone coming in if you've got the right ideals and you want to join the community, which is England, Great Britain, whatever you want to call it. But the bottom line is, there's no point in just pointing at one person. Is it the government's fault for not having these people introduce themselves? Or is it the government's fault, again, through PC, that these people are feeling empowered, that they feel that they don't have to assimilate because we will assimilate to them, which is pretty much what's going on now, I guess.
I guess it's pretty much a little bit of both. People have been given the sort of the free reign of the country and saying, do what the hell you like. We will accept it. We are diverse. We are open-armed, which literally was the most beautiful thing about Britain. We didn't care on your colour of skin. We don't care about your religion. We don't care about this and that and the other. Just follow our laws, follow our culture, and you're made in this country. And I understand why people want to flock to this country in droves like they are doing at the moment, because we are so diverse and we do accept people on an individual level.
It's an open free society. You can be whatever you want to be in the society if you go about your business in the right way. So, yeah, like you say, a lot of people through the comment section, the one thing over the past few uploads that's been coming up frequently, the words third world shithole. Now, okay, you can call them shitholes, but if you really wanted to go there, then you could argue that as intervention from colonialists made them shitholes any better or any worse. If you're going to just castigate a shithole as being a shithole, then let's look at the people who've exploited that shithole over that time as well. You know, but it's a tricky one. For me, this is always a tricky situation. It's getting really uber divisive now. That's what I'm really feeling. Partly because the problem's not being solved, and partly because when multiculturalism was working, everything, you know, there was understanding between blacks, whites, and other ethnicities 20, 30 years ago. Like you say, we overcome elements of extremism. But what's been happening since the last 25, maybe 30 years has changed that multiculturalism, that's made it flick the other way now, that's rolling out the negativeness within the white population, but quite rightly so, although it's being articulated in the wrong way in some ways. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do think people are articulating their frustration about the change in the country's dynamics
Mm.
very wrongly, and they're literally out of frustration, confusion, and what the hell happened sort of situation. They are flocking to extremist groups because they don't understand, because like a lot of people in this country they are diverse. They don't care about colour of skin, they don't care about sexuality, they don't care if you want to dress up as a woman, they don't care. As long as they're happy, I'm happy, sort of I'm all right Jack sort of situation. And the frustration is, now we're at a point now where um the infiltration of different cultures has literally taken over Little Britain.
Yes.
And we say, look, we was open, we're diverse, we don't care what you think or what you feel, as long as you're okay and you're all happy. But now we've got these cultures turning against us, which I think is a really, really big frustration to the local demographic.
Well, it's like a double
Sort of
standard,
the
isn't it?
indigenous people.
Yeah.
We need to accept that indigenous people of this country should have a voice on being shut up. If I want to experience the French culture, I would love to go to France and experience their different food, their different art, and appreciate their culture as a traveller. Same with Italy, same with Spain, same with Turkey, same with anywhere else in the country. And what they're saying about Britain at the minute is that we don't have an identity, which is wrong. It is so wrong. Britishness is a thing, despite what the leftists say. And at one,
Say that though, just to validate bringing more and more people in. You know, the more they can prove that there's no identity, the more they can open the doors up to every demographic known to man. Because what
no,
difference does it make? There's no identity to kind of hold to. So we'll just be this big one diverse melting pot and love it.
no, it's not that at all. It's literally about guilt.
Mhm.
The only thing they've got left about us being completely multicultural and shut us up is guilt. Guilt on colonial past, guilt on every single thing as being who we are as the British. They will bring up every shit thing that the British Empire has done against the world, whether it be like nearly like 1,000 years old. They'll still bring it up, but that has no true reflection on what's happening today.
Mhm.
And
Well, can I just bring up a point here? You remember the Exodus with Ramesses getting rid of the Israelites, parting of the Red Sea. Does Egypt ever get beaten down for that event?
no,
Does history ever tell you that Egypt were really bad for doing that? So we've got to beat them down on a regular basis. We've got to guilt trip them into never doing that again and to changing everything. And then we can open the doors up to changing Egypt to how we want to do it. It's just history, isn't it?
it's, but people do follow guiltness, and it literally is with the rise of political correctness.
Mhm.
And there is a massive problem with political correctness.
Yeah.
There really is, because political correctness is literally a substitute for being kind.
Yes, but it's detrimental. You
It
know,
is. It's,
it's almost foolhardy to be kind. Is something that you give out. You should give out to anyone, but I guess people are inclusive of it. If you see that it's going to be well received, you tend to give it out more. With people that tend to show you aggression and whatnot, you don't give it out at all. It's human nature.
It's
Through political correctness, for you to adhere to someone who is empowered and who through colonialism, who through guilt wants to not like you, but still wants all the fruits of what your country can provide, and you can't be frustrated about it. To me, that's what I kind of put PC down as. It's toxic.
Yeah, political correctness to me, I call it, when narrow it down to PCs, pearl clutching. And it literally is. It's a substitute for being naturally kind. We're trained in the sort of sense, this is the wording you should use. This is the feelings you should have associated with these words. And it's a facade. It's an absolute facade. And it's a facade in the sense that they don't even have to be kind. They just need to put on this face of they are kind.
Yeah.
And that's what I want ending. It's scripted fake kindness, and it pees me off.
Well, it's
as a Christian, it really does, because it's just so false.
Yeah.
Real kindness, and what we need to do is double down on real feelings and real kindness. And political correctness literally strangles the creativity of normal human think and talk. And being politically correct, you're not being yourself, because you're being controlled and manipulated by somebody who tells you what you're saying is wrong.
Right. So, Rose, if that's the case, what will that have? What effect will that have on the human mind if you're always in that position where you can't totally speak your mind, even if you were going to do it in a decent, honourable way? But political correctness makes it you've got to dodge. If you've got to keep dodging everything you're saying, whilst the person that you've got to be politically correct to can say what the hell they want to you, political correctness then, you could argue, creates extremist groups.
I absolutely agree, because we're not being true to ourselves through political correctness. It's a false virtue. It's a fake kindness. And people are sort of virtue signaling that I am this person, I am kind. Look at me. I have the pride flag in my portfolio on Facebook. Who gives a damn?
Same again, is that down to them, or is that down to the establishment pumping into this progressive ideology around that? Same again, through peer pressure, that you've got to be seen to be, gender fluid, or at least accepting to gender fluidity. You've got to be accepting to this, you've got to be accepting to that. Is that the peer pressure that then works in line?
No, this really does my head in. Obviously, sort of being a child of the 90s, is like, if someone turned up in a pub, clearly a male dressed up as a female, we'd probably take a couple of glances, but we just get on with our drinks. We just get on with our conversation. It never bothered us. And now we're looking at minorities being pushed under our nose, and we need to be so careful about our speech. It's not like, we live in England, for God's sake. We are the height of manners. We all know our manners. We all know what we can say and what we can't say. We don't need political correctness on top of that. There is some absolute turds that will... there is some absolute...
That word often enough, Rose, so indulge me, please. Just say it one more time.
Turds.
Yes.
There's some absolute turds out there that will be sexist, that will be racist, and will be sort of homophobic. Yeah, you don't give them people the time of day. That's what we got taught in the 90s. What happened since then? We get this literal aspect pushed down our throats to the point of going, I've already said 1,000 times now, I don't care what you get up to, just crack on with it. This is the English thing. We are well-mannered people. We've been brought up, it's literally our culture being, sort of best of manners. And then you get this fake kindness through political correctness, and it's scripted kindness. It's not sincere. It's not real.
No, it's not. It's false.
It
And
is false kindness, and
what could be a natural? Well, there is a natural political correctness. It's called common decency, isn't it? That,
yeah,
Rose, you're on here with me. Out of common decency, I'm going to treat you exactly how I want to be treated myself. So I'm not going to treat you in any way that's going to bring off something I would not want to receive myself. So it's an easy concept, but not everyone adheres to it. And sometimes alcohol gets involved, and then that philosophy is right out the window once you've had a couple of brandies. Let me tell you. But it is that simple. I mean, why? Can we ever go back to that now? Is the polarization too much?
I really do think we can go back to real kindness again. Real kindness, and we need to double down on real kindness.
So what would you
in humanity?
What would you say to someone now? Sorry, Rose, for keep interrupting, but what would you say to someone now if they were to say, "Well, that's a bit kumbaya," because I've had it all, as you would imagine. Pick a side. I've had that comment in terms of, right, well, tribalism, right, we'll pick a side because it's on. There's people that have literally done. So what would you say to them that say, well, yeah, we've had it with that kind of kumbaya attitude, Rose?
Yeah, I agree with these sort of people. And I agree tribalism does exist. As a base, it's very basic human nature to be tribalistic. It really is. And that's okay. That's okay. You're doing it on a sort of biological level, but you're not doing it on a spiritual level. You're not doing it on an intelligent level either. Like, this is the basic form where we are retracting to. And this is literally what I think the government wants us to do through political correctness. We're abandoning kindness, which literally stagnates self-being, self-worth, who we are.
It's desensitizing as well, isn't it? If you haven't got the milk of human kindness within you, you kind of have this desensitized attitude towards other people, I guess. Will that encourage that, do you reckon?
I think it can. I think it's really, really scary where I look at people that they've forgotten the golden rule, do unto others that you want to do to yourself sort of attitude. Is that, if you wouldn't put another human being through something, you don't do it to them. I mean, this is basic Christian principles, which has been the law of this land for thousands of years for now. And I just don't understand. People are turning against each other in sort of political correctness and this sort of boxing people in. If you're black, you need to think that way. If you're gay, you need to think that way. If you're a woman, you need to think that way. And it's so wrong, because it's literally stagnating the individual and how people think on a respectable, intelligent level. Group thinking is wrong. And I think my massive turning point, I had two, because I was a staunch Labour voter for many, many years. And what I got out of your sort of big debut, that big sort of debut that you made on the internet, was literally, I couldn't think of anything more racist to say to a black person or a person of colour. Is that you're following the right thought.
Well, what she'd done, and you brought that up with an earlier point as well, what they're doing at the moment, it's never been more polarized, but you've never been more pigeonholed into the tribe that you should be in. And whatever you do, you can't step out of that tribe. But at the same time, they want to tell you that everyone's diverse and looking, everyone's loving each other and, playing freaking banjos and kicking the heels. But it's not that now. There is stark lines. I'll never forget. I mean, that video you're talking about is obviously the one Peter Sweden filmed in Manchester, Unite Against Hate March. Following that, I opened up this YouTube channel And my first video was called Red Pill Rants. That's the first ever video, and it's still on there. It's way down there now. Now, there was one thing that I thought to myself when you were talking there. There was one thing that I'd mentioned in that video, that it's an open prison. What we're living in now is the equivalent to how I envisage a penitentiary in America. Not so much in this country, but I'm sure you've got your tribalism in this country also. But in America, you know, you watch the films, you've got your whites that tend to be more supremacist in the way they think. They stick together with a bald heads and, you know, doing the weights and all that kind of stuff, tattoos. Then you've got your blacks that are kind of separated with a railing or whatever, and they're doing whatever they're doing. Then you've got your Hispanics, and you've got maybe your Chinese and maybe your Eastern Europeans. They all have separate kind of partitions within the prison. And it seems to be a system that works for the prisoners as well as it works for the prison system itself. But to me, you come outside of the prison and it's almost we're living the same thing. Even though there's no cell doors, there's no reason for me not to live next door to a white person, but in the mind, I might as well be in that same partitional system, in a sense that, oh, I'm supposed to be in line with the blacks because of the institutionalized racism everywhere, so I've got to get myself in line, you know. And the way it's going now through PC, now the average white person is really supposed to probably think, as much as they're being diverse, they're being pushed towards hating anyone of a darker complexion. And I'm not saying that's wrong to have that emotion. It's a natural emotion. But saying again, it's not healthy to kind of follow that through. But it's the same thing. We're invisible shackles, basically. That's what I'm probably trying to say, Rose.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, sort of, you're dual heritage and so is my son. And it's literally on an individual level, looking at colour or race or anything like that. As individuals, we can fall in love despite all that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
look at
it doesn't need to, we don't need these boundaries, but I think the way society has been built on each other is literally, as tribal beings, the government are manipulating our future in the sense that how we can progress.
Yeah. Right. Well, we've done the hour. We're literally 1 hour 7 now, something like that. I'm loving this, Rose. Are you fine as it is now? Are you? I've got no comment section, so I've not been replying to any comments. I don't know whether you can see any comments. And
I can't know. I'm not on YouTube at the minute, so.
Right, okay, that's fine. I've tried to get it on my phone, but I still don't comments. So I'd like to apologise if people are saying hi and whatnot. We're not ignoring you. It's just that no comments have come up over the duration of this stream. So thank you for jumping on, anyone who's been on. Obviously, it's a bit late to say it now, but we've got Rose English here, a very eminent guest that's always giving support and research to this channel. So, okay, Rose, we'll do one more topic, okay, because we don't want the stream to go on too long. But I tell you what, I would love you to come back in the next few weeks and we can carry this on again, whether it be more topics or to go over the topics again, you know, in more depth. I would love that. I could see you being kind of a regular guest on.
Yeah, that sounds really, really good. And I'd probably like sort of question and answers, because a lot of people do have questions when it comes to integration. A lot of people have questions about sexuality, transgenderism and things. You know, people are so confused with the information that they've been sort of bombarded with all the time, and it's really difficult to sort of see any sort of sense. Like I said to you, so I've said this privately, is that I've got a rare genetic disorder, which is not really that bad, in the sense that, you know, I'm purely ambidextrous, so my left and right brain are I don't have one side or the other. Making a decision in my life is really, really difficult when I have one side of the brain fighting the other one. But I can, from a political point of view or a conversation point of view, I can literally take in both sides equally and come up with my own formulation, which is a very rare trait in a lot of people.
Don't they call that critical thinking, Rose?
Hey,
Don't they call that critical thinking?
well, it's quite difficult if you're sort of more artistic and rely on the right side of the brain. It's really, really difficult to actually formulate a conversation because you're not structured in that way.
Sure.
Your sort of brain identity, people who are sort of left-handed are more artistic in nature and sort of produce some really, really good things. But when it comes to maths, science, biology, they haven't got a clue. And people who are sort of right-brained, sort of right-handed, should I say, but reflects on the left side of the brain, they're more articulate and they can't see things in the sort of the sense of the person, the feeling aspect of things, where what I can see things very clearly as both sides, and I have so many internal arguments. Being ambidextrous, but I can literally lay a good point out. I can fight the right side as much as I can fight the left side. I know the conversations in and out on both sides. I can literally go to one side or the other and fight their arguments for them.
That's a difficult place to be at, isn't it? Because it's a bit more difficult to cope with in the mind of the average person. Like you say, it's more trickier, I guess, from your point of view, because I guess you've honed in on that skill now. But literally try to see both sides and then come through the middle with something that is fair on both sides as well. You know, without holding your own bias. I guess you're going to hold your own bias towards anything because you are your unique self, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, well, one more topic, Rose. Honestly, I could keep going. I could really. The time's just flown, and we've only covered 2 subjects, really.
Go on. What's the next one?
Right, well, it's up to you. Christianity, Official Secrets Act, or the Compact Migrant, one.
Oh gosh. You stumped me on that one because all 3 of them are really, really, really important and something that I hold quite passionate about.
Well, whatever one we do, the other 2 we don't. I'll make sure they're the first 2 we discuss on the next one. So we will cover it.
Okay. I do want to make a brief statement on Christianity in the sense that I am not going to sort of lecture or preach or anything. That is not in my nature whatsoever. And what I think has been, we have been based on in our society as English people is canon law, and we are now secular from canon law, and but we need to sort of celebrate our Christian roots, whether you're atheist or Jewish or Muslim or Hindu. This country is based on Christianity, and I think it needs to be celebrated a bit more than what it is. And
just to be acknowledged to be good, never mind celebrated.
Yeah, that'd be really, really good. But what I come across to your audience is that the message that they're receiving from Christianity is completely wrong. And I'm a staunch advocate against paedophiles. If people look on my YouTube channel, I've got a hell of a lot of information there about politicians. And
right, well, while you're on that subject, Rose, I'd probably ask you at the end, but because you've just said it there, do you want to give people your contact detail, your Facebook, whatever, your Twitter, just carry on, but just
Rose English 101 on Twitter and Rose English on YouTube. If you could I might drop the link later on my YouTube, because I do want people to look at my playlists on establishment paedophiles. And going back to the Christianity thing and where people get this wrong, that they think that Jesus was some sort of socialist, Jesus was some sort of leftist idiot, which is completely wrong. And the strongest thing that I will say about Christianity, I know you're atheist, but what I will say, those that interfere with children should have a millstone thrown around their neck and plunged into the deepest depths of the sea. Jesus was no pacifist when it came to the corruption and paedophilia. And people need to, this is part of our culture as well. Christianity is part of the culture. And Jesus advocated the death penalty for paedophiles. And I do as well. And I think if there was a manifesto sent out to every single household in this country, I'm sure damn well that people would want people to hang for paedophilia in this country.
Well, you've answered your own question as to really why Christianity's kind of going and fading out. Because, like you say, with the moral compass of the person that is known as Jesus, on his stance in terms of what you do with children and what is expected of in terms of punishment, we've moved so far away from that. Now we're actually advocating not only paedophilia, but consensual sex between children and adults. Now they're trying to merge the waters now where that almost doesn't come under paedophilia. So it's like you say, if we're talking Christianity, then how far away from Christianity are we when we've got a society like that?
We are so far away. And even if you look at what's happened to Tommy Robinson, with him actually speaking against, literally confronting paedophiles in front of a court.
Yes.
How far? The judicial system is still, yes, it's secular, but it still has Christian principles. What the hell happened there? Causing paedophiles anxiety. What the hell was that about? These people should not have.
Don't forget,
left. They should be stripped of humanity. If they rip someone's childhood and the future of them of becoming a normal functioning adult, they should be stripped of everything that game. So I just do not understand.
Well, same again. People might think to yourself, well, you know, they were given a break because they were brown, because they were Asian, because it's a PC culture. Who's to say that might be the case? But ultimately, you've got to put in the mix as well. The same again, the lowering of the bar of sexual contact between a child and an adult nowadays. It's almost going back to Rome in terms of there's no holds barred, and we can go back to the gender identity with that as well. So you know, it's not about blaming a demographic, although if a crime is systemic within a demographic, albeit a small part of that demographic, it's still there, it's still a stat. But you can't still merge the two when you've got maybe the judiciary that predominantly in most cases is Masonic. Now, I'm not saying that that's a negative element, but we do know that within the pyramidic level of the Masonic lodges, there is a lot of nefarious shizzle that does go on. And then you've got the judges, you've got the police. Same again, that we know that there's a hell of a lot of non-sin behavior that goes on with them. So it's almost like the worst people to try these groomers are the judiciary in a sense, because they're the very people that are appeasing to the paedophilia in the first place because they're not getting anything done. You know, I'm not saying just wheel them out to the pitchforks outside because he get ripped limb from limb. And some might say, well, good, you know, they deserve it. I personally, I get the eye for an eye. I want true justice. Now, if that's loss of life straight away, well, it's a hard one. We've come away from that kind of society in a sense. You know, where a lot of people may look at Saudi Arabia and other aspects of maybe Sharia law where you get beheaded for this, you get an arm chopped off for that. And we'll look at them and say, well, that's barbaric. So I'm not saying I'm getting all liberal and progressive and saying, no, we shouldn't do that. Because you have got to allow for the fact that sometimes there's a lot of ignorance as well. So some people can actually get tried and convicted when it's not actually the case. I'll never forget there was some post that was put online, or there was some hysteria that was caused. And some people misconstrued the word pediatrician with the word paedophile. So what they were doing, they would go to paediatricians' businesses and literally, like, you know, outside spraying the windows, damaging it, and like literally wanting to rip out the people. It's like, that's where you've got the pitchfork mentality and the eye for an eye mentality, that's the first port of call, that can be quite dangerous in a sense. You know, the witch burning, you know, is she a witch? Let's drown her. If she drowns, she's not a witch, or if she does drown, you know, I can't remember what way round it was, but it was a crazy logic in order to prove whether the witch was the witch, because she ended up dead either way, you know what I mean? There was no good way, but I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Probably what I'm trying to say is that if we're looking at these these grooming gangs, then we've got to look all around us what is truly bad. Not get totally polarized with the argument as in, let's point the finger at them. Let's get paedophilia established, talked about, and sorted out, whether it be a white person doing it, whether it be a Muslim doing it, whether it be a Chinese guy doing it, whether it be a Romanian doing it. You know, there's a lot of sex trafficking goes on in Eastern Europe as well.
I completely agree with you, and I will disagree with you on the sense of the harshness of the punishment, but we need to set a standard.
Yeah,
in this country. We need to set, especially when we've got things like DNA and things like that.
Yeah.
We need to set a standard. We need to get a message, and I can't think of anything that would unite people.
Yes.
More than
the job's being done. Then I guess, is that what you're trying to say? It instill confidence back in the people.
Yeah. I think if our government literally says, you know, we need to be strong on this issue and this issue only, we won't have Muslim grooming gangs. We won't have the priests that are raping choir boys. We won't have, if it was a zero tolerance to paedophilia, and I'm sure 90% of this country will be well on board with it.
Well, they are. And this is
violently, but people are looking. It's so divided because people have different voices. It's like politicians against Muslims. You know, whose victim voice speaks louder? And people that have been abused by politicians in the past, or people that have been abused by the church in the past, are looking at the Tommy Robbins movement with bloody sort of like a green envy type, and they're looking at him and say, well, he's highlighting this, why isn't he not looking at my voice? But he's only highlighting that because that's what his family's gone through, but they don't care. It's because he's in the public eye more than the churches or more than things like that, and we're literally getting divided. I don't care who commits paedophilia, I just want the person responsible for it to literally face the British public. I don't care if it's a Catholic church. I don't care if it's Muslim grooming gangs. I don't care.
Well, you don't have to say that in a sense, because I know through this channel, through the hundreds of people that I've spoke to while I've been doing this, and just with my friend base and what I've learned anyway, we talk about Jimmy Savile, you talk about Rolf Harris, Stuart Hall, any of the wrong-uns that have done what they've done, regardless of the skin tone, it's a heinous crime. And you will get a white person that will come out vehemently and want to attack Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, the lot of them, and do the same to them as they would want to do to a Muslim individual. So that's where there's no blurring there. There's no favoritism. However, there does seem to be an element where it does seem to be polarized, where it does look like the attack is going one way. Now, that same again could go down to the articulation of the movement itself, and not truly articulating to the people external of the movement that bad is bad. We don't really care what color they are, but we have got to bring in the instance of the lack of assimilation. The lack of assimilation will lead to empowerment, will lead to then some form of a caste system in terms of white people, maybe black people within a certain community tend to get looked down upon, even though they're in their own country on an indigenous kind of level. But yet now the people that are looking down on these people are taking it one step further and exploiting these demographics because they're empowered, and because of PC, you cannot say anything about it. So that's what really makes it obviously a little bit different than your Jimmy Saviles, because there's no PC when it comes to that. We all can come out. Even as a black man, I could come out and actually castigate Jimmy Savile, and I'm not going to get told out of political correctness to shut your mouth. You know,
because they're white and everybody knew them in the press, because the press literally did not mince a word when Jimmy Savile died. It was publicised. Everybody knows about Jimmy Savile.
But yet still couldn't hold a proper inquiry without it breaking down through 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, we can't talk about that at all, can we? Because it links right up to the highest echelons of society.
National security.
And that is literally, I was literally in sort of a little fret about how I'm going to do this, because of the different movements and things like that. And I thought, there is nothing more that a human being, a dad, a mum, a grandparent, a niece, a nephew, a brother, a sister, cannot forgive in society is a paedophile. And it shouldn't be. I do wish the Muslim population would rise up against their own that are doing this. I mean, I think we're in literally a situation that they can't, because the rise of people like Tommy Robinson and their movements and things like that. But if we'd literally had one central view of literally looking at paedophiles, people that literally they need to have more harsher sentences. Like I said, I will literally, I condone the death sentence for these people if it's proved with DNA. I think instead of looking against each other and playing each other off the way that, you know, sort of Tommy against Muslims, even though I completely understand where Tommy comes from, because it happened to one of his family members. If it happened to mine, I'd be probably in the same position. I'm not seeing things across the board rationally. We have a problem in this country with paedophiles, whether it come from the government, the Masonics, the Muslims, or whoever. We just need to be literally, you know, this is one law for everybody, and nobody escapes the punishment. And I think humanity in this country, like the referendum for Brexit, if we all got that ballot card through our door about paedophiles and what we would want to happen, I would sure 90% of the population. I think it would be the biggest vote in history, more than Brexit, because I can imagine people completely agree with it. Other than if you're not a paedophile, you completely agree with actually having one law for all, and this is what it means.
It's weird, isn't it, Rose? The way you've just put it there, it's just made me think, what a weird situation when you're quite happy to accept white paedophilia and castigate it for everything that's wrong, but yet you're quite happy to turn your back to something that you've got a feelings going on, but you don't want to call it out in the same way. What a state of affairs this is. You're still complicit, aren't you? You know.
What really, really pees me off is that facts are hurting people's feelings, and facts shouldn't even be associated with somebody's feelings. They are what they are. Right. If you look to Nigeria, right, for example, look towards Nigeria, you will probably get about 98% of Nigerians, black people, committing the crime of rape, because it's a majority black country. And people look to this country and say, well, the majority of rapists in this country are white. No shit, Sherlock. This literally 90% white country. No shit, Sherlock, that we are going to get more white paedophiles. For God's sake, can we talk about per capita?
Yeah.
Can we actually get down to the literal bones of it?
Yeah.
For God's sake,
It's a generalization of a basic, obvious facts in it, and they're just putting a plain political spin on it just to kind of close you down again, I guess.
I don't care, but it's literally, what did you expect? You go to Nigeria, you find more black people raping people because it's more of a black country. You come to this country, it's like, it's all the white people that are doing it. Yes, because we're 90% white. Can we talk about per capita and who are doing it?
But what part of that do they not see, Rose? The moment that they do that, they're handing a get out of jail card free to any other demographic.
I know, it's so stupid. I mean, you can't, we do live in a 90% white country, and you know that population is decreasing by the decade. I get that, but right, 90% white, and then you've got the category 1, the category 2 on rape in this country, and then you've got the ones that are committing the most crime in the country. So we look at rape, and it's divided by 1 and 2 categories, and sort of the one-off issue, you know, sort of people dragging children at bus stop and grooming children. In the sense, in a white country, it's predominantly white people that are doing it. I have no shame in saying that. We have our own paedophile problem in this country with the white population. But when you get 5% of the population on type 2 committing more crimes, we need to say we have a problem. And we can't
I mean, it's the same it's like transfer that to, say, someone crashing a car. The insurance does not think of demographics, or shouldn't do. It thinks about who's right and who's wrong. I mean, insurance are obviously thinking about not paying out to anyone. That's their ultimate freaking goal, being the crooks they are, but that's another debate. But ultimately, whether you're black, whether you're white, the crash is the crash. The details are there. Who's right, who's in the wrong? Right, okay, he's in the right, he's in the wrong. Well, he happens to be Muslim. Well, I don't care. He's in the wrong. You know, he done the crash, so that means that he's liable and he's not. And that is the common sense of it all. It's like trying to apply that to insurance companies now, where you've got certain demographics through PC that they can go and crash a car into someone else's car, and you're to blame for it. You get your car taken off when it wasn't even your fault. They went up your ass. It's like, what the hell? So it's a crazy logic, you know, that kind of spills over, and you wonder why people want to climb the gates of frigging Downing Street.
Well, speaking about that and what we saw on the reaction of Tommy's guilty verdict, I do think, you know, we're literally at the point of sort of civil unrest. I won't say civil war, we're not near that at all, but there is going to be civil unrest. What we saw about this time last year with his trial, and what we're seeing now, we're seeing anger and hate against the system, and then people literally wanting to fight the police. It's really, really scary.
You know, and the thing about it, Rose, sorry to interrupt, but it's the fact that it's being done over a long period. It's not just a quick snap, grab him, put him in prison, right? We told you, we warned you. No, they're dragging it out over 1-2 years. So imagine the effect not only it's going to have on him, anyone, if they're going to keep continually doing that. Whether people agree that it should happen to him or not, I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about the psychological effect. And then the 2 years of all of his followers having to go through the ups and the downs. You know, if you was a little child living in a family with them kind of same instabilities up and down all the time, you could argue that you're living in an abused relationship. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, it is sort of mental abuse of the masses, what we're seeing at the minute. And I think Tommy's been put on such a pedestal with a lot of people, and there's so much disconnection and so much despair in the British politics at the moment that people are looking to people like Tommy, and I class him as a false prophet. as a Christian, and people are looking up to him for hope. And what I saw, people reacting to the police the way they did, is definitely going to lead to civil unrest if the outcome is so negative. But that is, to me, that is literally what they want.
Mm-hmm.
It is what the system wants.
Yeah.
They want to implement martial law and control everybody. So they're using one person to instigate martial law.
Well, look at it this way, Rose. We're all human beings. We're all kind of biological computers. We're all garnished with love. We have that when we're born. It's only the complexities of life that kind of kick that out of you over the years.
Mm.
But when you have an establishment on a global level that constantly treats people like this, then it is inevitable what is going to happen to that said person, isn't it? That you're going to get people that will go to a rally or maybe sit outside of a courtroom, and because of the verdict, because of the mental abuse, they will show some form of frustration, which then, I've seen some footage yesterday, which then you get police that will brandish the truncheons, which then you will get because of the kind of low energy that's then being thrusted towards them. Rationality is then gone out the window. You're then talking us and them, or being, you know, the working class that are being trodden down, them being the police that are trying to get order. Whether they actually agree with you or not, it's irrelevant. They're doing that job. There is some cases where some go above and beyond and literally show the true colours, but it can be misconstrued where they're probably trying to do the job and get control back, but that is being construed as, oh, look, the police are beating us up again. So then that turns back onto this movement as we're being victimized again, when in reality, you could argue your articulation of the way that you projected yourself, there was only one outcome where they're going to brandish things. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, I absolutely agree in that sort of sense. I think there is manipulation on either side, and we need to think about the bigger picture. We need to ask the basic questions of who, what, why, and when. When people are polarized towards an individual, and that individual, like Tommy, is why are the government doing this to him? When did it start, and what is their goal? We need to ask ourselves these questions, and people are so blind and literally blindly following without asking themselves, why do I feel like this? And
that pays to what you were saying, well, what we were both saying about truly this movement, because it's such a working class movement that has normally just got on with work, got on with being the working class individual. All of a sudden now, we have to get political. We have to start learning how to articulate ourselves in the arena that the highly educated individuals articulate themselves every day of the week. And that is going to require a bit more conscious thought, a bit more rational thought, a bit more critical thinking.
I think, yeah, critical thinking is literally out the window when you actually polarize people. When you polarize people to one set mindset, they have lost critical thought straight away. When you put people on pedestals and you've got someone to worship, not quite worship, but follow, you've lost all sort of sense of your own dignity. Because if someone says, you know, if you're a staunch Tommy supporter or a staunch Tracy Blackwell supporter, if you say one bad thing about that individual, you know, you've got hell to pay. And that is not in human nature. Human nature is literally asking those basic questions all the time.
Yeah.
And we need to critically think about people's motivations, because people can get really complacent with the support around them.
Well, the irony is that element of fascism that you're kind of explaining there, that's the same thing we're fighting against on the other side.
Yeah, and I think we as a movement on this sort of side of things, sort of me and you, we're not left or right. We've both probably classed ourselves as quite centrist on the fence, sort of.
Yeah.
We're just literal human beings observing. And I do think what I want people to do is what I said about political correctness, literally seeing it as pearl clutching and fake kindness and have no part in it. And on the other sense, when it comes to people wanting to polarize you on a left or right paradigm, Tommy supporter or not, I want people to actually think for themselves, because people are not thinking for themselves because the government wants them not to. They
wants them exactly where they're at the moment, I would say.
Exactly, and I do think that they're playing into their hands, and the civil unrest is exactly what they want for a totalitarian. If we were talking about Orwell's 1984, we're literally giving the government what they want by reacting. And they're using Tommy as a pawn to sort of problem, reaction, solution. We need to see that as human beings. I don't particularly support everything that Tommy says, but I think he's right in a lot of different things, and I will support him because his family member went through grooming gangs. I understand that's why it's more than a narrative, it's like a mission. And I always say to people, if that happened to your cousin, would you not make that the mission in your life to expose it? That's exactly what he's doing, and I don't care about the left, right, whatever. That's what I believe. But to put him up on a pedestal and have him as somebody to follow, somebody to look up to, without any sense or sensibility of what you're doing, why, what, where, and how, all the time, people need to come back to the basics of questioning everything.
So in other words, what you're saying, you could be putting yourself in a trap.
I do think people are putting themselves in a trap, and we know we're one of the most monitored countries next to China, and they're implementing facial recognition. Somebody even got arrested for covering their face walking down the street. God knows how the burqa is going to work in that situation, but there you go. Do you know what I mean? We are literally facing an Orwellian society, whether we like it or not. And to literally the government throw the book at Tommy at every single thing is so planned and so manipulated, because they know the country's going to rise up.
I know you can see a book playing out, can't you? That's the way it looks. You can almost, without being Nostradamus, it doesn't take too much brains to know that where it's going to lead to. But you know what, Rose? Honestly, this has been one of probably the most intriguing streams on various topics for a while. We're probably better calling it there, because we've been 1 hour 42 minutes or something. That's a long stream. We don't want to make it too long, just because it may get laborious for people to kind of keep engaging. But at the same time, I could keep going for another 2 hours, Rose, because we're like this on the phone, aren't we? You know, as I am with people, we just drift from one to the next. We're putting will to rights, and your kids around your neck, my kids around my neck, and we're like trying to shoo them off, still keep on the phone and blah, blah, blah. So
it's like one of the famous Great British sort of traditions, though, is like sitting down in a pub, having a pint, having a glass of wine, and just putting the world to rights. Indeed. And it's so relaxed between me and you. I want this dialogue being brought to sort of the Great British pub again, and because people are so afraid of talking because of political correctness. I just wish we could bring more dialogue back to us. I really do. And you know, thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. Thank you very much for coming on. I know it's you've been dodging the bullet for a good few months now, Rose. So I'm glad I've been able to get you in my target. And the one person I would like to thank, and probably mutually yourself as well, Great Brit. Great Brit is the man that's probably got us together on this forum, and from months back, literally talking, which led to then you giving me research, which has then led to videos. So I support. Well, I don't even know whether Great Brit is actually on the stream at the moment. He should be doing his spanner duties, but same again, because I've got no, I don't even know. I do know there's been many people watching over this time, and the numbers have not really dropped. So that says something about this stream, that it was engaging for a lot of people, Rose. So
yeah, definitely. And I think the next time, if we could get the YouTube up online, I'd really, really like sort of to have a Q&A more than anything, and listen to other people's opinions as well. Because I think so many of us are silenced in our own homes. I think public dialogue is what we need, because the community pub is gone. And I think YouTube is literally taking the place of the community pub. So I would literally love to hear people's questions and their reflections on what I'm saying, what you're saying, and maybe sort of reflect on other people's opinions, because I think we need to do that as, you know, sort of people, listen to each other a bit more.
certainly. Is there any any details? Do you want to repeat your details again for anyone who's just joined after the last time you mentioned? How can people get in touch with Rose English?
Well, I'm on Twitter. I do share a lot on Twitter. It's mainly about the establishment paedophiles that I cover on Twitter, but it's Rose English 101. My YouTube channel is Rose English, and I've got an extensive playlist of establishment paedophiles. Not so much on the Muslim grooming gangs. I'm trying to build that bit up as well on sort of on reflection. But there is a lot of things on there that people need to realise, that, you know, the government establishment that supposedly working against paedophiles are paedophiles themselves. Sort of a finishing note, I'd like to say what I said. You know, I am a staunch Christian, and I won't sort of preach to anybody, but I will say Jesus wasn't a pacifist, and he did say anybody who would interfere with children should have a millstone thrown around their neck and put in the deepest depths of the sea.
Well, and it's like, just you know, any man who can go to the money changers and kick ass is a man that I want to talk to.
Yeah. And the next thing, I want people to abandon political correctness and enjoy their own creativity and their own mind. And I will say political correctness is literal pearl clutching. It's false. It's a substitution for being naturally kind and our natural feelings. It's a facade. So they can fake kindness. And I think we need to double down on kindness.
What a lovely way to end it, on kindness. That is the way. But it's been riveting and very engaging, Rose, and we'll certainly have to do this again in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And like I say, we'll leave it open, whether it's more question based, whether it's more carrying on with certain topics, and we'll maybe introduce some fun topics as well, so we can all have a little bit of a jolly as well.
Oh, definitely.
It's all part of critical thinking, and it get thinking on various topics. So thank you very much, Rose, and thank you to everyone who has joined this stream today. As ever, I never announce it. I just open the doors and you can come in if you want to. I hope it's been engaging for you, informative for you, and same again, Rose English. Please subscribe to Rose on YouTube. She's just given you the Twitter handle as well, so you can get in touch with all the various information that she's putting out there. It won't be long before she'll be back on this channel, and even sooner than that, probably, if I ever do anything earlier than that, it won't be long before she's on my comment section, because she's very supportive of what I'm doing here. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining this stream. If you enjoy it, you know where I am, Red Pill Phil on YouTube. Like and subscribe. The last thing I'm going to say, or you know what, Rose, I'm going to let you say it. You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to let you say it.
I love you all, even the pissing haters.
Goodbye, y'all. God bless.